Welcome back to another episode of Behind the Burger. I'm Caroline Romo, the Executive Director of the New Mexico Beef Council, and I'm here with Jim and Jovani Armendariz. And I from Santa Rosa. I'm so excited you guys said yes to the podcast. A lot of advance notice, right? So thank you for saying yes and being willing to tell your story. Will you tell me a little bit about yourselves, and maybe Jim, you can start and just introduce yourself, where you're from, and a little bit about you, and then we'll go from there.
Sure. So my name is Jim Armendariz, and we're from Santa Rosa, New Mexico. Grew up ranching in the area, and still ranching today there. And we ranch a little, and we've got a little meat company where we do direct-to-consumer marketing. And this is my brother, Jovani.
Yeah. So, my name is Jovani Armendariz. Like Jim said, we grew up in the Santa Rosa area. We've done some ranching there. I live in House, New Mexico, and we do a little, my wife and two daughters do a little bit of farming there. We also run some sheep in that area, and the ranching operations, it's a family deal. My dad's kind of the backbone of it, and we help out where we can. We both have full-time jobs off the ranch, and my dad's on the ranch full-time. We all kind of do what we can.
Yeah, and it's the common story in New Mexico that someone has a job in town, and we talk about ranching, that there's not a large margin, so you've got to be adaptive and have others. So tell me about your guys' jobs in town.
Sure. So I'm a veterinarian. Actually, it's a new business. I graduated vet school in May.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks. That's something I'm certainly proud of, but very glad to be done with that part of life. It was probably one of the harder things I've ever done. It was a second career for me. I've been involved in agriculture in one way or another all my life. Prior to that, I was working for the USDA, and I got into vet school. And so now we're kind of trying to balance the ranch side of it with the, building up a brand new practice as a solo doctor. And so, but I really enjoy it. It's been a really good adventure, and I'm looking forward to see what the future brings.
Absolutely. Congratulations. Kind of nice to have a veterinarian in the family as a rancher, huh?
Yeah, one less thing,
So tell me about your job in town.
So I work for the Natural Resources Conservation Service. Most ranchers know it as the NRCS. And I'm the state lead for range management for New Mexico. And so my job is to train our newer employees on range management and how to put it on the land. And it's really rewarding work. I really enjoy my job. The nice part about what I do is that I can put it into practice right on the ranch. Everything I preach and I talk about in my job, they're things that we put into practice on the ranch. And so we really pride ourselves in our range management and land restoration. I was showing you some pictures earlier. Our ranching operation consists of, I guess I'll rewind and tell you the story of how we got started, because really it's a neat story. And it's not really mine or Jovani's story, it's our dad's story. It's really the story of the American dream. My parents came from Mexico in 1989. When they got here, all they had was the clothes that they were wearing. And my dad got a job as a sheep herder over in Vaughn, New Mexico. And they ran sheep and cattle there in that area for a long time. And so that was one of his first jobs here in the States. And from there, he was a ranch hand and a cowboy for several ranches in the Santa Rosa area. But like every cowboy, everybody's got the dream of their own ranch, right? And lucky for us, my dad's always been a hustler. He's a mover and a shaker, and he's the only one that doesn't know that it can't be done. And so we started ranching for ourselves in 2002. My dad got a grazing lease for 12 cows right outside of Santa Rosa. And then from there, he acquired another grazing lease. Meanwhile, he was still taking care of other people's ranches, and he was running a few cows here on the side. And as time went on, he picked up another lease here and another lease there. And as we all know, our ranchers, the average age right now is 60 years old. And so there's a lot of people that are getting older and they don't want to sell the ranch, but they can't really take care of it anymore either. And then a lot of their kids are not interested in it. So that's how we've been able to acquire grazing leases all over the area. And so fast forward 23 years, he's got 15 different grazing leases scattered across 3 counties. So the joke in the family, we call it scattered land and cattle, because we're on the road all the time.
Yeah.
Checking cows here, checking waters, the day-to-day ranch stuff. And so 23 years later, he's now working for himself, and he's got he's grown the herd from the 12 cows to 300 cows now, and he's his own boss, which is really great. That was our goal as his kids, that someday we told ourselves in 2020, we told ourselves someday he's going to be too old to be working for somebody else, and he needs his own place. And in 2020, he was able to buy his own ranch, a small place outside of Cuervo, New Mexico. And so he operates out of there, and then he's got all these grazing leases scattered from all the way from Portales, New Mexico, to Fort Sumner, to Santa Rosa, to Puerto de Luna, all the way to Pastura, New Mexico. And so always on the road. It's probably the hardest part about our ranching operation is that the ranch is not one unit. So a lot of time on the road.
Oh, absolutely. Contiguous land is a luxury, right? And when you're trying to, build something, you've got to make those sacrifices. And it sounds like tires are one of the sacrifices, right?
Yeah, definitely. On the, economic side of it, it gets expensive, wear and tear in vehicles, tires, even things as like the cost of bulls, right? Bulls are not cheap. Well, when you have smaller leases, you tend to end up having to buy more bulls than if you were in one contiguous operation, and that's pretty significant cost. But I say time's the biggest cost or expense. There's only so much of that in a day, and you can't be in 2 places at once. So that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is just getting to every one of them and keeping up with it. And there's the cattle health side of it. But then there's, every one of these leases requires their own maintenance. There's fences, there's gates, there's drinkers. Most of them were acquired because they were in poor shape. And that's how we got the opportunity, being willing to put in the legwork and fix them up. And so that's probably one of the biggest challenges, is just making it enough time to get to all of it.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and we sound redundant, I'm sure, on the podcast, but to be a rancher, you have to be all those things. You have to be a fence fixer. You have to be a plumber a lot of times. The only lucky thing that I think is cool about you guys is you have to be an animal health expert, and you have to be a range science expert. So you guys have this in your career and in your life, which seems like a really impressive thing, that you can take both those things home, right? And improve your ranch. And how wise was that in your career path that meets the goals of the ranch, right?
It's funny you say that, because since we were kids, we grew up ranching, taking care of other people's ranches, and we knew the ranches were not ours. And I could remember being a kid and praying to God that I could give this way of life to my own kids, knowing full well that these ranches were not ours, and it was very likely that I would not be able to give this way of life to my kids. But God answered our prayers, and here we are. And but just about every move we've made along the way has been with this goal in mind. Everything from the schooling we got to the jobs we have today, and it's been really a neat journey.
Yeah, well, and so well designed too. Like I said, I just think that's really neat that with the end goal of owning a ranch, again, the land and livestock is number one priority. Well, talk about the land a little bit more. So you talked about you pride yourselves in your range management and improving land. Maybe talk about that a little bit and how you've done that in your leases and your land.
Okay. Yeah. And so it's my job to manage land. Grazing management is my thing. So a lot of these grazing leases, when we pick them up, the lands are very degraded. They've been overstocked for a long time. And when we pick up these grazing leases, there's a lot of bare ground. There's a lot of very little diversity in vegetation. And within 2 years, we turn those lands around. And when the owners, the landlords, come over and see their ranch, sometimes they don't see their place again for another year or two. And they come back and see their place and say, wow, this place never looked this good even when I had it. And so we've established a reputation of being good land stewards in our area, which has made life a lot easier to be able to grow the ranch. When you start from nothing at all, that first grazing lease is always the hardest one to pick up.
Okay.
But as soon as you get started with the first one, and people see the change in their land, the joke is telephone, telegraph, tell a rancher, and the word gets out. And so the word has gotten out in that area that we're good stewards of the land. And so now it's been a lot easier to pick up a new grazing lease. People are going out of business, and they just come to us, say, hey, I'm thinking about getting out. Are you interested in my place? And so in that Puerto de Luna Valley, there's a whole valley called the Puerto Creek Valley. And just within that valley, there's 12 different owners. And we've managed to put all 12 of those leases together to make one big continuous ranch there. It's been really neat to piece it all back together, because it's likely that it was all one ranch at one time anyway. And now we've pieced it all back together, and there's still different owners, but it's all one operator. And it's pretty neat.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think if you're, a consumer listening, all these leases and ground and all that, sometimes you can lease from a private entity, you could lease from the state. There's, Bureau of Land Management, federal leases, right? And so just like, renting an apartment versus owning a home, obviously a lot of times economics work easier to do a lease, right? A rental, for layman's terms.
Absolutely. I mean, the economics of land ownership, ag land, they're getting pretty steep, and it's getting harder and harder to go out and purchase land and pay for it with the cattle that place can carry. If it's getting, in a lot of places, impossible. And you have a lot of interest, investment interest coming in and buying up a lot of land, and not necessarily for its agricultural value or use or purpose. And so that, takes a lot of that land off the market. But those same operations, they still want to be good stewards of the land, and a lot of them are not interested in running it. And so there's still opportunity there for someone who's willing to be a good steward of the land and keep it in good shape. It's financially, it's feasible to rent land over buying it. There's the barrier to entry in buying land is steep. It's, first off, hard to come by, and if you want to make it pay for itself, you have to get really creative with how you run it. Kind of an outside the box thinker. Your grazing methods, you've got to figure out, how can I run enough cows on this place to make that land payment? And that's something that we ran into that with my dad's place, where he bought it in 2020. He was able to do that financially because of the other lease properties around that support a payment on. But even there, we've had to get really creative in how we're grazing it. Last year, we experimented a little bit with the Healthy Soils grant and put some virtual fencing collars on it. And so it's been really neat to see that, with the goal in mind of better use of the land, kind of a little more intensive than we would otherwise be able to do it with the traditional barbed wire cross fencing. And when you're talking about extensive range land like that, polywire and electric fence, it's a lot of work to string it. On a smaller operation, you can string a 1/4 mile of electric fence or polywire and get it done pretty easily. But when you're talking about, thousands of acres, that's it's a lot less feasible, especially when you've got 10 other leases that you got to get to. So we're excited about this virtual fencing. We've seen lots of really good changes in the first year that we've done it. One of them has been an increase in the carrying capacity of the ranch.
Okay.
Granted, we had an awesome year. We were blessed with tons and tons of rain, compared to most years. But it was a combination of being able to graze it a little more intensively, but have most of the ranch in a rest and recovery phase while a small part of it's being grazed. So that really you combine that with a really good year of moisture, and it really jump-started the land and the species diversities. We're seeing more grasses than we're seeing grasses that we didn't know we had on the place.
Wow.
And so I guess that's kind of a roundabout way of how you address that barrier to entry and the cost of land, and being able to find a way to make it pay with grazing alone.
Yeah. Well, and knowing about those grants and finding those grants is a really, wise way to do it, I think. And I've never seen a virtual fencing, so that's I've heard about it obviously, but I've never seen it in person. And using technology to be better ranchers, gosh, that's absolutely impressive and a great way to do it, right?
It's really neat. It's the learning curves was a little steep when we started, but once we got it all implemented, it's definitely not an autopilot type of situation. You're still having to, if anything, you're having to be out there monitoring your grass and your rangeland a lot more.
Okay.
Because you can get in a bind and overgraze the place if you don't move them soon enough.
Okay.
And so it kind of forces you to be out there consistently, constantly, every day looking at your grass and determining, well, are these ready to move? No, we've got a couple more days left, and but you become more observant when you're monitoring and having to make those moves a lot more often, and you're kind of confining your cattle into these smaller pastures. But learning experience has been cool, and we're excited to do more of that.
Oh, yeah. And do you, so when you're doing the virtual fencing, are you setting the fence boundary like on a phone or a computer or something? Or
Yeah.
Oh,
We use the Gallagher product. It comes with an app that you can do it on your phone, your computer. Yeah. You draw out your boundaries where you want them to be, and you deactivate a virtual fence, activate the next one, and they kind of move themselves. We just drop the fence between one paddock and the next, and you can go out there and move them, but if you're not in a hurry, they'll slowly drift into the next one, just looking for greener pasture.
Yeah. And do you have to have Wi-Fi, or is it satellite, or how does that work?
The system we're using works off of cell towers, and so if you have adequate cell service, which doesn't take much, all you need to send and receive a text message. If you can send and receive a text message, cell service is adequate.
Okay.
But there are options for places that do not have cell service. They've got some kind of booster base stations that work off of satellite signals, and it receives a signal and then sends it out to your cattle. Yeah. We've been fortunate. We haven't had to use that just because of where we're operating.
Yeah. Modern technology. They've thought of everything, right? So what do you guys think is one of the biggest challenges you all face? I know you've kind of already talked about challenges. It's hard to talk about ranching without talking about challenges, right? But what's the biggest, or maybe just a different challenge that we haven't talked about, or yeah?
Probably one of the biggest ones for us is not being in one contiguous piece of land. Yeah. Being on the road all the time. As Jovani mentioned, it takes a little more work, a lot more work. And so because we're on the road so much, we've had to become innovative in how we do things. Another thing that we've adopted on the ranch is these water sensors on our storage tanks, where you can just pull up an app and see how much water's in your tank when you wake up in the morning. And that saves you a trip. One of the tanks that we've got a sensor on, it's 120 miles round trip just to go take a look in the tank, see if there's water for the cows. And so we tried that out, and it worked great. The product paid for itself probably within the first year.
No doubt.
And so working for NRCS, I told myself, well, why isn't NRCS cost sharing on these things? So I started talking to NRCS to the right people, and I started explaining these products to them. And as of October of last year, NRCS is now cost sharing on these water sensors for ranchers to open up an app and take a look.
Wow.
And that really saves a lot of wear and tear and time and energy. And it's not like ranchers just going to sit and kick back the rest of the day. There's plenty to do. So.
No, right.
And so that's one of the big challenges, but we've solved it with this technology. And then this virtual fencing, it's really neat to be able to pull up your phone and you can see all your cows. You can see where they're at and what they're doing. And so the joke we called digital cowboys, we're becoming digital cowboys. And but this technology is eventually going to take off. Our philosophy is that we've got to keep up with the times. If we're going to stay relevant in this business, we got to keep up with the times and keep adapting, because every day the world spins faster and it's harder and harder to be a rancher. And so that's one of the biggest challenges for us, but we're finding solutions.
Sure. Do you have another example of how you care for the livestock? What ways that you
Sure.
keep them safe?
Yeah,
Obviously, we talk water, fence, all the things.
Yeah. So kind of as a veterinarian, that kind of falls on me to develop the vaccine protocols and do the preg testing and kind of ensure that the cows are in good shape and that, that's healthy cows is it's all part of being profitable. Is your cows have to be in good shape. We have to have a good body condition. So we're constantly monitoring, just like every rancher out there is monitoring body conditioning, figuring out when we need to supplement, when we need to move them to another pasture. But what we've, a lot of focus goes into the cows. But what we've come to realize over the last 20 years that we've been doing this is that the land needs to be healthy. The soils need to be healthy. And we've really put an effort into that. And I know it's counterintuitive, right? Where we're focusing on the soils and the land, but healthy lands equal healthy cattle. And if you've got that grass diversity where you've got a little bit of cool season mixed in with your warm seasons, and that really helps bring down your feed bill. Some of the biggest expense as on a cow-calf operation is labor and feed. If we can cut down some of our labor through the use of some of these technologies and reduce a little bit of our feed bill by figuring out how to grow more grass, stockpile grass, that sure does give you a little bit of an advantage. But we're always looking at the land and the cattle, and there's a balance there. You can't sacrifice your cattle for your land, and you can't sacrifice your land for you've got to maintain that balance.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
It's a fine line sometimes.
Yeah, well, I think that ranchers are the ultimate environmentalists. Even
absolutely,
you're doing more for the land than I'll ever know. Right? That I live in town and get to buy delicious beef. And you guys are putting into the land so that the livestock and so that we can get that healthy beef. So, what is the best piece of advice you've ever received? It's kind of a hard question. I don't know how I would answer it, but
I'd say
for me it was pretty simple, but it's kind of driven a lot of pretty much everything I've done, and it came from just growing up with my dad. Something as simple as, if you're going to do it right. And you can apply that to anything and everything you do. Yeah, take pride in what you do it right. And that's part of why that's the basis of his success, and being able to grow the operation and go from a small 8 cow lease, 12 cow lease to where he's at today, is because he's given it his all and done everything that he's done right, and that's opened up opportunities. So it seems pretty basic, but it's
very applicable in any setting. What do you think?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
This episode of Behind the Burger is brought to you by the New Mexico Beef Council. At NMBC, we're all about supporting New Mexico's ranchers and bringing the story of beef to life, from pasture to your plate. If you're enjoying these conversations, be sure to follow us on social media to keep the journey going. You'll find us on Instagram and TikTok at NMBeef and on Facebook at NM Beef Council. We're sharing ranch life, beef tips, recipes, and the people behind the plate. Come be part of the story.
We've been blessed with excellent role model. Really, I tell you, this story is really not ours. It's my. I feel like my dad should be here, telling his story. But really, to be able to have that guy as a role model and watch him do what he does, even though it's not advice that he speaks, he's through his actions, right? Has been the best example we've had. I say he's the only one that doesn't know that it can be done.
I'm going to remember that line for a long time. That's a good line. Yeah.
Probably with the 4th grade education, but a really smart man. One of the smartest guys I've ever met. And all the education that he didn't have, he made sure that we got it. And between the three of us, we've been able to make it all work. And my mother, I never give her enough credit, but behind every good man is a even better woman. And she's really been awesome. We never give her enough credit, but she's really has been the backbone of all of it too.
Well, I can't wait I hope I get to meet them. They sound like wonderful humans. And I think, I would be impressed to hear the guy that line is that he's the only one that doesn't know he can't do it. I think that says a lot about a man, right? Well, what is your favorite part of your job?
Oh man, the best part about growing up ranching is to be able to take your kids to work every day. It's probably the only profession I could think of where you get to take your kids to work every day and it's encouraged. And we grew up that way. We grew up with him. As soon as we were old enough, we were feeding cows and falling asleep on a bumpy road, checking waters, and we've learned a lot along the way. We've got college degrees and all that good stuff, but most of our learning happened on the ground, and it happened from him. He's probably been the best teacher we've had. And now I get to take my kids to work with me, and my little girl's 5 years old now, and she rides her own horse by herself and helps us gather cows, and it's really the confidence that it builds in a 5-year-old little girl to ride her own horse, help you gather cows, and at the end of the day, feel like she was part of the team. And what it does for a kid is confidence. They go to school and things are easy for them. Say, oh, this is easy. I was on my own horse last week gathering 200 cows, and so that's probably my favorite part of the job, to be able to share it with the whole family.
Oh yeah, family is at the center of ranching. What do you think your favorite part is?
No, I'd certainly echo what Jim just said. Being able to involve my kids in that, I feel like we've both been blessed to have grown up that way. I think that anyone who's ever got to grow up on a ranch is just a huge blessing. Whether they decide to pursue that in the future or not, it's a lifestyle that you can always fall back on the things you learned. So yeah, I definitely proud to be able to do that with my kids. On the veterinary side, I get to be in the same world on both sides, right? Like, we do it at home with our own operation, but most of my clients are ranchers, and I get to help them out in meeting their needs, whether it's fertility testing bulls, preg testing cows, or colic. Like, I still got a foot in that world in agriculture, and just being able to help producers out with their challenges. I think I feel blessed to be able to do that every day and I get to do what I love, And so that's for me. I'm really enjoying both sides of it. The veterinary side, helping folks out and being able to come home and do it, help my dad out, and involve my kids in it as well. I think it's a blessing.
Yep. It sounds aspirational and inspirational to be able to be tied in. And then I think, I only have the agriculture job part of it, right? But it's wonderful to be a part of this industry, and always grateful for every minute that I get to work for ranchers. And every time I step foot on a ranch, I am always amazed and in awe of it's very romantic in my head on a ranch and as a part of the agriculture industry.
I'll add to, you asked earlier, one of the biggest challenges that we have as ranchers, or the beef industry, or just agriculture in general, right? I think that telling our story is what we don't do enough of that. And so it's great what you're doing with this podcast and getting people on here to tell their stories. You're providing a platform for our personal story, everyone that you've had here. And it's not just the beef side, it's all of agriculture. We are all facing challenges that most people aren't aware of. So you're providing an awesome service, just providing this platform.
Well, thank you. We love the storytelling. Sometimes we think we're even putting together an oral history, right? It's just storytelling and all of that is ancient practice, right? And it's good. It transcends generations and everything. And I think now the modern version with the podcast is so fun, and it's been so special to hear everybody's stories and all of that. So thank you for saying yes, right? So sometimes some folks have been getting voluntold. And I think I just met you guys last night and said, will you? And you said yes. I mean, you guys said it faster than I finished asking. So I really appreciate that, because being willing to tell your story is hard, and being vulnerable and telling your side of it always is difficult. So I am ever grateful for the yes, ever grateful.
Well, thanks for having us. We sure appreciate it.
So we were talking about it last night, that you guys have the ranch and then you also go direct to consumer. So talk to us about the direct to consumer A&G Family Meats.
A&G Family Meats is the name of the company. And I'll let Jovani tell the story, because really it was his idea. We started in 2020, and I'll let him.
Sure. So A&G Family Meats, it kind of came out of necessity. We were in so first off, A&G stands for Armendariz Gutierrez.
Okay.
The company there's three of us, my brother, myself, and we have another partner, Scott Gutierrez. That's where the G comes in. We all kind of run cows together and have helped each other out over the years. And so in 2020, during COVID, when the processing facilities were shut down and the price of cattle just plummeted, and there was the scarcity in the grocery stores, and we had some calves that were on wheat pasture that we needed to get marketed, but the current market conditions were, it wasn't really an option for us to sell them at that price. So we had too much invested, just like so many other ranchers at that time found themselves in. And so we'd always kind of talked about selling direct to consumer, but we never, it was just kind of a thought. And that situation forced us to, let's explore this a little more. And so we created the company. We figured out how to start an LLC, and we didn't really know what we were doing. Just happened to pick up the phone and call our local processor and said, "Hey, how many processing kill dates do you have for us?" And he said, "Well, what do you want? How many do you want?" And so we threw a big number out there. Said, "Well, give us the appointment and we'll try to get them sold." And it worked out. It worked out. We started out on Facebook and Craigslist advertising. But we got a pretty rapid response. The demand was there. It was a situation. It was out of necessity, but 5 years later, we're still doing it, and we've got some really loyal customers that keep coming back, and we're always working towards, building more clients, but it's been helpful on the cash flow side. We all know that as beef producers, one of the biggest challenges we have is cash flow. We tend to have one payday per year. Right. You spend all year raising the calves, taking care of the cattle, and you ship them to town, and you get that one check, and you have to manage your finances to get you to this time next year. And so this has kind of helped address that. It's been another avenue to market our calves. We don't sell every calf that we raise. Does not go through A&G. And so we're still dependent on your regular commodity markets, but it's been, one more option for us, and we've really enjoyed it. We've got to meet a lot of really neat people along the way. It's a lot more relationship building, with when you sell direct to consumer, you're really building those relationships and maintaining them, and that's been cool too. Just getting to a lot of educating as well. That was one of the biggest challenges we had in starting this, was educating our clients, the consumer. They, in their mind, they're buying 1,300 pound steer, and the first thing they expect 1,300 pounds of beef, and it's understandable if you're not part of the industry and you don't know the ins and outs of it. And so really visiting with them, explaining to them the process, how beef is processed, what the live weight of an animal will equal to in pounds of meat in your freezer, and most people are very open to it, and they just need a little bit of explained to them, and they can wrap their mind around it really well. There's a lot of support for buying local, and we'd love to see more and more of it, but we certainly appreciate all the support we've had from our clients.
And what is it to if you have a live weight to how much beef? Is it like 60%?
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Dion's took the best parts of a green chili bacon cheeseburger and made them a pizza. Savory beef, hatch green chili, crispy bacon, and melty cheese, all on a handcrafted crust. It's bold, it's beefy, it's a pizza worth sharing. Try it today at any Dion's location.
Yeah, live weight to hanging weight, which is your, the skin, all of the feet, organs, skin, and head have come off, and what you're left with is the hanging hot carcass. And that's about 60-65%. It kind of depends on, the yield of the animal. Some have more fat than others. The more fat you pull off with the skin, the less it yields, But yeah, 60-65 is kind of a good roundabout number,
Yeah, I think that's an important number that we even we're talking about trying to make a handout that would help someone like you that's selling. I think there is a former one we have, and then we were trying to update it that helps a small business. It says here, this is what to expect when you're buying a 1,300 pound animal. You're going to get like 60% of that in,
right,
like you're saying, the hanging weight, and then what that means, what that could mean in cuts and all of that. But it's complicated.
It is. Especially
I can't explain it.
Yeah, when folks, our consumer culture is, we want to know exactly what we're paying for, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you're selling something based off of a hot carcass hanging weight, well, you can't provide an exact number to a client. How many pounds am I going to put in my freezer? Well, that depends on how you want your cuts. It is custom processed. The processor, we take that cut sheet. You can have those. You can have bone-in steaks, boneless steaks. You can have you can have half-inch steaks. You can have 3/4-inch steaks. How much of it do you want ground? All of that affects the final weight that goes in your freezer, right? Because the more you trim off of it, the more bone you take out of it, the less those pounds are going to be. And so that's part of that, educating the client, and it's a process. Most people are okay with it, right, but they just need to
got to explain how it works.
Yep.
Yeah. that carcass will hang for a minimum of 2 weeks, dry aging, and even that shrinks the size. So what it weighed when it was first killed, 2 weeks later, it's even less than that because it lost some water weight out of there. So even that number adjusts, but you got to explain all this to your customer. Filling out these cut sheets is really funny sometimes because I'll get a call and I'll walk them through the cut sheet and how to fill it out. And I had one of the funniest was I had a guy tell me, I told him, I sent you the cut sheet. Fill it out. If you got questions, give me a call. And he said, oh, no, I don't need a cut sheet, Jim. Just run that whole thing through the ribeye machine and I'll be good.
Was that a joke or a serious? We don't know.
I think he was serious. I said, well, I wish it was that easy, But that's another hard part is everybody wants ribeyes, right? But there's only so many ribeyes in one beef. And so what to do with the rest of it,
Yeah.
And then everybody's used to cooking with ground beef. That's everybody wants ground beef because they're used to buying ground beef at the store. And it's the cheapest thing we can afford at the store. So we grew up, all our recipes are tied to ground beef.
Mm-hmm.
And so sometimes there's a lot of demand for ground beef and not as many roasts and even steaks. And then other times everybody wants the steaks. And then what do I do with all this ground? And so it's a balancing act, but it's been good.
Yeah. So when you have a sale on ground beef, we know what happened, right? Everybody wanted the steaks, and you've got leftover ground beef. I think that's really important, and I think that's one of the struggles too. When restaurants want to buy local beef, they want 100 ribeyes a night or something, or some crazy number, and well, that's a lot of beef not being eaten, right? A lot of roasts and things, and so it's a complicated process, right? Sourcing beef and all that. But you guys are on our local beef directory. Where else can they find you if a listener wants to get beef from you guys? You guys have a website, Facebook, not Craigslist anymore, right?
No, we've got a website where you can place your order, put deposits down, and then we also have a Facebook site. So. It's A&G Family Meats. If you Google it, it will come up.
Perfect.
And the same deal on Facebook. It's A&G Family Meats.
Awesome.
So we kind of, Jim's kind of our social media
guru.
And we try to tell our story there quite a bit. There's a lot of on the ranch posts. What's going on the ranch. The family's pretty involved, and so you kind of, that's part of that relationship building, right? Is you're selling your story, you're getting your family involved, you're building relationships with your clients, but you're also selling your story, your operation story. So it's a good way to reach out, but you do have to stay on top of it.
It is a chore. I'm lucky at the Beef Council we have someone that's in charge of social media. Shout out to Jane Hartman. But it is quite a thing. But I'm not sure if I follow you already, but if I don't, I'm going to make sure and follow you, and excited to see more about your story. So we've talked about challenges, we've talked about all the things and adaptability and all the things. What makes you keep going? Why do you continue to do what you do?
I'm going to say that we're like most ranchers. We're stubborn, and we like what we do, and we're hard-headed, but we love what we do. We refuse. I don't think you can be a rancher, be in the beef industry or any other part of agriculture without grit. You've got to have a little bit of grit to make it work.
What most people don't understand about the agriculture business is that we're trying to make a living off of one paycheck a year, where the rest of the world is used to getting paid every 2 weeks. And so that's why we do what we do. That's why we get into everything we get into, because we're trying to make all that work. I'm convinced that the farmer and rancher is the hardest-headed human being on this earth. And they have to be. They have to be, otherwise we would have given up years ago. We would have moved to town and gotten a job in town, banker, a lawyer. We'd have been a barber or something like that, because there's easier ways to make a living than farming and ranching. But it's very rewarding.
I I am so grateful that ranchers are hard-headed and that farmers are a little hard-headed too. And I mean that with the utmost respect and no offense, that because we have to feed the world. And so we need people like you that are willing. We need people with that grit and all of that to continue to feed the world, because it's a growing population, and American ranchers and farmers are feeding America and feeding the world. So I'm very grateful. Well, now I have a fun question. I tease that it's my favorite question. I think that last one might be my true favorite. But so what is your current favorite way to eat beef? So it doesn't have to be, the forever favorite, but what's your current favorite for eating beef, or maybe even a fun recipe that you want to share?
Oh, man. It's pretty hard to go wrong with tacos, right? Everybody loves tacos.
Everybody loves tacos.
I've recently started to dabble a little bit with pellet smoker.
Ooh, okay.
And my wife's actually a lot better at smoking meats than I am. But that's a challenge. That's like smoking meat is an art, and you've got to really, it's hard work, and there's a lot of trial and error in that. So I've really enjoyed just trying out new cuts of meat and running them, putting it in that smoker. And so I've got a long ways to go in getting good at that, but I've really enjoyed it. And so as far as a good smoked brisket, you can't go wrong with that.
That's a lot of work, though.
That's a lot of work.
A lot of hours.
But I've learned to appreciate it more since I've started dabbling in smoking meats. It's like, wow, that's a lot of work. When I get a good smoked brisket from someone else, it's like I'm at the point where like that guy needs to be. I got to give him his props, because I know that there's a lot of work that went into that.
Oh, absolutely. I know my husband's even started briskets at like 3 a.m. or whatever, 9 p.m. And then he has to wake up in the middle of the night to check the temperature or all of that. And I definitely say thank you for a brisket. Whoever is the chef deserves the props, like you said. Well, thank you guys so much for being on the podcast, for telling even just a piece of your story. I feel like we could talk for hours and still not know enough. So thank you for your willingness, and thank you for being such an important part of the industry and your town jobs and your jobs at the ranch. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having us.
Yeah, thanks for having us, and thanks for allowing people like us to share our stories. I think that's important, what you're doing. So keep up the good work.
Thank you.
We're big fans of your podcast. So when you asked, yes, we were like, why not? I watch those podcasts all the time.
Oh man, well, it's an honor to even get to sit next to you guys as you tell your story. It's, again, ranchers are my favorite people, and always inspired and excited to hear more. So thank you guys, and thank you again. Behind the Burger is a podcast produced by the New Mexico Beef Council with the goal of telling the stories of the cattlemen and cattlewomen of the New Mexico beef industry. Thank you for joining us for today's episode. If you would like more information, please visit nmbeef.com. Whether it be a burger, a steak, or another beef dish, we hope you are enjoying beef at your next meal.